Welcome to Permission Slips, a space for you to practice paying kind attention to your life so you can discover the wholeness, purpose, and joy you are made for. I'm Jillian DeBritz, and I'm a life and leadership coach and a recovering perfectionist, learning alongside you how to give myself permission to be human. And I'm doing something a little different for this first episode of 2026. I decided to give myself permission to pay attention to my life out loud with you here and to do a little bit of self-reflection. I normally have guests on my podcast, and I love having conversations that are meaningful and life-giving for me and then getting to share those with you. But I decided that this is a space where I'm inviting you to do some reflection and some learning and some practicing of gentleness toward yourself. And so I want to do that. I want to give myself that same gift. And hopefully it will give you a bit of perspective on your own life as well. And my hope again is that this will give you space to reflect in a way that maybe you wouldn't otherwise. I heard Emily P. Freeman say recently, January is the new week between Christmas and New Year's, that it's the space where we get to reflect and continue looking back and looking forward. And I love that because what we expect of ourselves often at the end of the year is completely unrealistic. You and I both know this, that there's so much happening in the weeks leading up to Christmas. And then in the week after, even as we're decompressing and taking down decorations, maybe mine are still up. I don't know about you, or visiting family or just resting and recovering, that there's not a ton of space for many of us to do the deep sort of reflective work that is required to connect on not just a surface level, but like on a soul level with our longings and needs and hopes and dreams and fears and aches and our grief and our celebrations, both from the past year and as we're anticipating the year to come. So I love that we are not in a hurry. We don't have to rush into 2026. We have all the time we need to reflect, and none of that will be wasted because the timeline that we set for ourselves is often artificial. And the value comes in creating space to reflect. As a life and leadership coach, one of the things that I tell people I do is to help people pay attention to their own lives. And a lot of that work is around building awareness, creating an awareness of your current reality. Where are you actually in your life today? And then also connecting with the longings for your ideal future. So, where am I currently and where do I hope to go? And that could be like a practical goal, or it could be more of a vision for your life. Um, when I get to the end of my life, what do I hope I can say when I look back? And then the job of a coach, my job, my privilege, is to sit with people as we ask questions and get curious about the gap between where we are and where we want to be. And I often tell clients a lot of the work, the hardest work, comes from paying attention to what is actually true about our current reality. And, you would think that it's not as hard as it is to describe what's true, but to slow down long enough to let the chaos and the responsibilities and the spinning plates that are constantly, for most of us, moving, that we're juggling throughout our lives, to let those things sit quiet and still takes time and intention to be able to set those things aside and to pay attention to what's on the inside of us. And so I'm going to do some of that here with you. And I am hoping again that this creates some space for you to do this for yourself. And I'm going to start just by talking about the things that in my own life worked for me and didn't work for me in 2025. Again, I often talk with clients about how we have to reflect in order to connect. We reflect, we look back in order to recognize where we've been and make sense of where we are. And then as we identify clearly where we are, we can look ahead with greater clarity and confidence. So here are some things in no particular order, truly random. This was my spitball brainstorming in the little bit of reflection time that I took over the past couple of weeks, a little bit by little bit, I mean, a little bit. I did not spend a ton of time on this. And so thank you very much for building in space with me here to do some more of my thinking out loud. Full disclosure, I am not a write a script type of podcaster. I am literally thinking out loud with you here in real time. But here are some things that worked for me in 2025. And I hope that you will take the time to make your own list as well. But in no particular order, here's something that worked. Walking. Walking worked for me, especially walking in the sunshine. Okay, so little context is I have always been an athlete, and the way that the times that I feel most alive are the times that I am moving my body and especially working up a sweat. When I say exercise, I think it doesn't count unless it's at least 30 minutes on the low end, more like 45 to 60 minutes of hard, heart pumping, sweat inducing, breathing hard, laborious workout. And so that is something over the past several years that I've actually been unlearning and trying to practice gentleness toward myself in the way my relationship with my body, the way I see exercise. And it's been really interesting to be in a place where my body has limits that it didn't have before. So this summer, I actually was not able to exercise for about 3 months, and it was devastating. I had an injury in my hamstring and created some issues with my sciatic nerve, and no sort of exercise that I did felt good. It felt like no matter what I did, walking with my weighted vest, low impact jazzercise, like simple movements exacerbated a pain that was really intolerable. And so I had to take about 3 months completely off of exercise. When I was feeling better after I'd rested for quite a bit, I was able to slowly start some short walks. And I am telling you that walking made me feel like myself again. There's something about being outside, having the sun on my face. And even honestly, I don't prefer walking in rain or snow or clouds, but there is something about fresh air in even more sunshine that clarifies my mind, that helps wake me up from the inside out, that gets my creative juices flowing. And it makes me feel more like myself. It helps me to connect with God. It helps me to pray. It helps me connect with myself and know what's even happening inside. I often will not listen to anything. I prefer walks in silence. But on other days, it's a great place to listen to an audiobook or a podcast or music. Most of the time, though, I prefer to walk in silence, and it's time where I can really get my brain and my mind and my heart to settle. Moving my body helps my insides to settle. Isn't that interesting? So that is something that worked for me, and I'll get back to how exercise and all of that impacted me a little bit later, but walking worked. Something else that worked for me this year in 2025 was building support networks for myself. And when I say networks, I mean plural networks. Something that I have learned the hard way, I should say, over the past couple of years is how desperately I need people in my life cheering me on. How dependent I am on other people to remind me who I am when I forget. And I will tell you that is not something that I'm super excited about or comfortable with. Um, because I grew up working really hard not to need anyone. I worked really hard to be the best I could in all the things I attempted, totally independent. In fact, I actually failed a very important oral exam in college, like my final oral exam, because I did not want to ask my professors for help ahead of time. Apparently, that was a part of the process. You were supposed to go in and ask for help. And I did not know that. And I did not want to ask for help. And so that was a pretty devastating experience. But the reality is, I've had to learn as an adult to let people support me, to let people know what's really true, what's real below the surface, not just what I want people to think is true about me. And so that has come from a lot of different places. And learning to have people support me looks like a lot of different support networks right now. And so I've had to learn as an adult how to let people in and not just let them in a way that's like safe, a way that feels like, come to my house and let me share with you the things that I think it's okay for you to know I struggle with, but in a way that's like really vulnerable and messy and feels needy and really uncomfortable for me. So, for example, I have a group of friends who I call my wisdom team. And several months ago, actually, probably a year and a half or so ago, a friend of mine who we meet regularly to pray for each other. And actually, she's in a different state. So we talk on the phone early in the morning, and I'll walk and she'll walk, and we just pray together over the phone. And she's like, Jillian, you're doing a lot of things that require a lot of prayer. You're leading in a lot of places, you're creating podcasts and writing, and you're trying to bring women together to do some pretty significant things. That requires people praying for you. Let me rally some people to pray for you and to support you regularly. I was like cringy, uncomfortable with the idea of asking people to pray for me on a regular basis. It was so uncomfortable. So for over a year, we just prayed together, the two of us. And finally, I reached a point last spring where I was just feeling like I need more support. I really do. I cannot, in my own strength and power and wisdom, do all of the things that I'm trying to do without breaking. And actually, I'm still going to break, but at least breaking to pieces that are irretrievable and not fixable. Breaking in a way that's unhealthy as opposed to humbling and a part of healthy growth. And so I gathered together some friends who had said that they wanted to pray for me. And I started emailing them every week or two and praying together on a monthly basis. And that has been a lifeline for me this year. Other support networks I have, I meet with a spiritual director once a month, and it's a space where I can show up as I am. You actually have heard her if you've listened to the podcast. Susan was on my podcast in the fall, and I'll send a link to that episode because it's one of my favorites. And so I meet with her once a month to talk about the things that are going on, and she helps me pay attention to what God's doing in my life and where He's inviting me into places of greater surrender or trust, or where He just wants to love me and I can't see it on my own. I've continued to meet with our counselor. Corey and I do marriage counseling regularly, and also I see her individually as needed. I started last year something else that really, really worked and helped make a huge difference in my life was the Confessional community that I joined. And so this is a support network that was life-changing. And I'm actually just about to start another one through the Center for Being Known, which is a nonprofit organization. And a Confessional community is a space where people are committed to meet for 90 minutes once a week. I actually did another podcast episode with my friend Rachel, who is a part of my previous Confessional community. And we talked about what it means to practice being known in a Confessional community. And we take turns telling our stories to one another, which sounds like such a simple idea, but I tell you what, to have a group of 6 to 8 people give me their full, undivided, loving attention for 90 minutes. And I only told my story a couple of times. We each took a couple of turns, and the rest of the time we would hold space for one another. It taught me to love and be loved like nothing else in my life. The uncomfortable beauty of being seen and deeply known in all of the mess and all of the discomfort, and having people stay with me in my discomfort, communicate their love to me with their words and with their faces, and keep showing up again and again and again to tell me how they see me, the beauty and goodness that they see in me that I can't see in myself. It healed something in me on such a deep level, and I want more and more and more. So that was another support network that worked for me this year. Another support network I have is a group of girls that we've been meeting for years now. We call ourselves Wine and Prayer. So we meet once a month to drink wine and connect and to pray for one another. And it sounds like girls' night, but it's actually very intentional. So we do intentionally take time to each give an update and share either what's working and what's not working, either some, happy, crappy, or some sort of intentional sharing time. And then we ask specifically for prayer. So each person gets the hot seat, and then we make sure to take time to pray. And that is something that over time we've had to fight for. We've had to really work our calendars and schedules around making this a priority. But after showing up together most months, not every month, but most months for years now, it is a gift greater than I can describe to have a group of 7 women who know my story, have walked with me over time, and who want to know me and pray for me and support me. And so you're noticing this theme, right? Like I have these places where I am receiving support, and there's a part of me that feels like, oh, I shouldn't need that much community. I shouldn't need that many people in my life to, cheer me on. But the truth is I do. I do. We all do. We all need people who we can be ourselves with, who we can share the heavy things that we carry with, the joys that we carry with. And I would say most of us need a variety of people. My husband is amazing, but he cannot meet all of my relational needs. And so it's been really beautiful to have these support networks. And I think of my other friends too on Marco Polo. Marco Polo is an app. It's like a video communication app, if you're not familiar. And I talk to multiple friends in multiple states, multiple times a week. And it's another space where I can connect in the margins, in the car, or when I'm getting ready in the morning, or when I'm doing dishes. And it helps me, again, feel seen and known, and also see and know the people in my life. So that was a lot of explanation for why my support networks have been working for me in 2025. Along those same lines, just a shorter little bullet point here of something that's worked is accepting help. And so again, this idea of allowing people to support me, of creating spaces and trusting people in my life to support me, receiving that help and support in practical ways is something that has worked. It is really hard. So accepting help has looked like a couple specific things. And I have these coaching groups that I run, and I love showing up and being with women in a group setting, asking really intentional questions, guiding, leading, facilitating that time. But it also matters to me that when people walk in, they feel really cared for. They feel like I thought of them ahead of time, that there's hospitality, there's snacks and drinks, and it's a cozy space. But like thinking about food and wine and whatever food specifically is served is not my strength, and it stresses me out. And so I have my dear friend, Amanda, who this last year offered to come to one of my groups. I think I ran 3 or 4 cohorts last year. I can't remember how many intentional life groups I ran, but she said, let me help you. You don't need to do everything by yourself. Let me come and I will do food and you can just show up. And I am telling you, it was a game changer to have that mental load like lightened, that I didn't have to do everything alone. And then not only was she willing to help practically, but then I had a friend who knows me, loves me, and believes in me that was able to debrief with me and help me process after each group session. Like, this went really well, or this was kind of my experience. This is maybe a suggestion that I have that we could do differently. And it was so comforting and helpful and confidence building, courage building for me to have someone there with me in it. And I have another friend who's so generous, and she has given me gifts in unexpected ways throughout the course of our friendship. But it's really difficult for me to receive other people's generosity. I want to be the one giving it. And so to receive generosity from a dear friend has honestly felt like a spiritual discipline. It feels like I'm receiving the kindness and goodness and love of God every time I receive it without apologizing, and just say, thank you. Thank you so much for this gift. So that has been a practice to accept help. And that's worked for me this year. I still don't love it. It does not feel good to let people help me. I would rather be the giver than the receiver, but I actually think there's something really important about learning to let people love us in practical ways. So that is something that's worked for me. Something else that's worked for me this year is collaborating with other women. And I will tell you, I've said it before, I have never liked group projects. I was the girl in high school and college especially that never wanted to do a group project because I, one, wanted to control the outcome and had a very high level of excellence that I expected myself to achieve. And not everyone has that same level, and that's okay. But two, I was going to end up doing all the work anyway, so I might as well just do it by myself. And then three, there's the piece where it's messy to work with other people and you have different ideas. No one else's ideas are as good as mine, obviously. So it's been a growing curve for me to learn to collaborate and actually to see such beauty in collaborating with other women And this has been a slow, steady process. And I think a lot of it has come from what I mentioned earlier about learning to receive support and learning to be in community with other women and seeing the beauty of other women and having them tell me the beauty they speak into that they see in me, having them speak that out loud over and over. It's given me a lot of security that I can show up in a group of women and I know I have something unique to offer. That's come over time from letting people love me and learning again to practice that with other women. But there have been a few specific times where I've been able to collaborate. One I'm thinking of my friend Jessica, who I was able to speak with at a women's event. We did a co-speaking at a women's retreat. And let me tell you, it is hard. It's hard to co-speak, to create content with someone else because we are different people with different perspectives and different styles and different values and different ideas about what needs to be said. And I'm just really proud of us that we learned to do that. We practiced honoring one another and we practiced believing the best about one another. We had to have some, hard conversations about like, I'm feeling this, or what did you mean by this, or this hurt my feelings. And so again, that vulnerability again is showing up as I learned to collaborate with other women. But to see the beauty on the other side of how much richer the experience is, not just for me, but for everyone in that space, whether it's at a speaking event or I'm thinking of other places I've been able to collaborate this year. There have been some women's events, some teams that I've been a part of that I've been able to help facilitate. And our heart has been to create events in our community where women are focused on collaborating and celebrating one another, where there's no room for competition or comparison. And so that's been the heart of the event. So even on the teams, as we plan these events, we have had to work really hard to model that ourselves, to choose not to compare or compete, and to bring up the things that are just a natural part of being human and being women in the world. There is stuff that comes up, right? There's comparison that happens. And so to name those things out loud and to trust one another enough and believe the best about the other's intentions and not just push it down, but to bring it up in love and make space for one another's experience and honoring that and being quick to apologize. That has taken so much work, but it has been so beautiful to collaborate with other women and to see the beauty, the expanse and diversity of beauty, like a diamond with different facets that emerges when women come together. And this is true of people, right? When people come together in community, the way we're designed to link arms and offer our gifts to one another selflessly, that's the vision. That's what we're made for. Um, and I just have had the chance to practice that with women a lot over the past year. And I'm really grateful that has worked for me. And something else that's worked for me is podcasting. Again, this has been such a fun space. And guys, I'm almost at a year since I started my podcast. I started out hard going after an episode every week and I loved it. And it was a lot. I do everything. I do all of the recording, planning, scheduling, producing, editing, generating show notes, getting it on YouTube now and on all of the different places. And creating social media graphics and all of that. Like I do all of it by myself. And so it's a lot of work and I love it. Truly. My favorite is to show up and to have conversations with people, but it's taken a lot of time. So I took the summer off and then I started again this fall, podcasting every other week. And that has worked. That has worked really well. It feels more sustainable. There's still so many conversations I want to have, but it feels like it's a healthier pace for me in this season. But I will also say that podcasting makes me feel more like myself than almost anything I've done, which completely surprised me. I did not expect to love it so much. I've always known that I loved words. I love to write. I love to speak. I did not expect to have been prepared through all of the work I've done as a coach, all of the training that I've gotten through certification over the years and practicing with clients, asking questions, being curious. It has prepared me for podcasting in a way I could not have anticipated. And so I am loving that. Podcasting is working for me. That worked in 2025. And then the other thing that it feels a little cliche to say, but it's actually really true, is something that worked for me in 2025 is watching God show up. And I say that in all seriousness, that I really was amazed as I sat back in multiple situations where, whether it was an event or a conference I went to, or a podcast that I started, or even a conversation that I was having, a group that I was leading, even an individual session with a client, over and over and over and over again. I found myself in places in 2025 where I was like, God, I don't actually know how this is going to work out. I don't actually feel prepared. I don't have a plan. I don't feel like I've done enough. I don't feel smart enough. I don't know if I'm ready. I don't feel confident enough. If you don't show up, I'm going to look like a fool. I don't know what I'm going to do. Or if you don't show up, I'm not going to have enough money to pay my bills and to keep my business open or to pay for the podcast. And over and over and over, I have seen him show up in the most unexpected ways. And it's kind of become a game where I'm able to sit back, not without anxiety completely, not without prayer, not without, my own responsibility, but I'm able to sit back and watch and expect that he's going to. And that's been really, really fun. So that's working for me. And that is something, those are the things that have worked for me in 2025. I hope to continue practicing in 2026. So flipping the script a little bit here and going to the other side, things that didn't work. Here we go. You're getting this very raw and very honest. But here's what didn't work for me in 2025: business strategy and or selling any of the services that I offer as a coach specifically. So when I say business strategy, I mean that I don't have one. I do. I have like big picture thoughts about how to run a business. And so when I say business, the work that I do as a life and leadership coach is what funds everything else that I do as a volunteer. I love making a podcast, and that is not monetized. It is something I do out of love and passion. And the work I do with clients funds that because there are expenses that come with podcasting, and the work that I get to do in my community with creating events for women. It's a wonderful gift that I get to do as a volunteer. So I struggle at times to prioritize my time, and I extra struggle to charge people for the time that I want to give. I really, honestly, I just want to help people. And I love coaching. I love sitting down with someone one-on-one or a group of people. That's probably my favorite. I love both, but I just want to sit down and ask questions and help people discover who they're made to be and how they're meant to live. Like I will sit with you and ask you questions all day long. I'll encourage you all day long. I'll help you build a plan for your life all day long. And it brings me life and joy. It is really difficult for me to charge what the appropriate rate is for that service. And it's also hard for me to talk about the fact that I coach, that's a business service that I offer. Even on the podcast, people have mentioned, you don't talk about your coaching. What is coaching? What do you do? You should advertise yourself. And that's really hard for me. So that hasn't worked. I need to do a better job, I know, of creating a strategy to not just pay for the podcast, but to build some revenue so that I can contribute more meaningfully to my family and our community. So that is something that's not working. That did not work in 2025. Okay, something else that's not working and that didn't work in 2025 was our schedule. Our family schedule was too much. And I know part of this is it's just outside of my control. We're in a season where both of our kids are now in middle school. As of this week, both kids are in an after school sport, which is awesome and so beautiful. And I love watching them and cheering them on. It just makes it really hard to find time as a family where we can just be together for dinner. We're eating dinner at like 8 o'clock at night some nights, or honestly, just to have unscheduled time at home, which I need. I am not someone who thrives when we have something every night. I need downtime at home with my people. And so that's been really hard. And I'm not sure if there's a lot I can do about it, but it didn't work for me. And that also combines with the things that Corey and I are both doing in the evenings for part of each of our jobs and ministry work. It takes us out of our house a lot. And so that's not working for me. Need to think through that this year. Something else that didn't work for me in 2025 has to do with what I mentioned earlier about walking. So the flip side was that not exercising, specifically not lifting weights, did not work for me. So I was injured. It was not my fault, but I found that not exercising regularly in a way that really pushed my muscles and stretched my stamina, it tanked my mental health. I did not feel like myself, and I lost a ton of muscle and stamina. And my body changed very quickly. I am in my 40s, so there's that too. So the combination of not having the endorphins and regular grounding practice of exercise, and also the body changes that came with losing muscle and gaining weight and all of that, that's been really hard. And I have had this lifelong struggle with body shame, and my relationship with my body is something that I have really worked hard to heal and to find a new narrative. And it's something I'm still working on and working through and trying to find voices that I trust, because I don't want to subscribe to diet culture that tells me just follow this plan and you'll lose weight. Losing weight is not the end goal of my life. It cannot be. My friend Rachel, who I actually did a podcast episode with about rejecting body shame, so lots of episodes to go back and listen to if you're interested. She said to me, Jillian, I don't want to spend the rest of my life trying to shrink myself down. I don't want to spend all of my energy trying to get smaller until I die. And I resonate with that. And not exercising has shifted my body and the way I feel in my body in a way I don't like. And so I'm really struggling to discern what's a healthy way to move forward in a way that also supports the truth that my body is good already. It's good no matter what it looks like. And it's going to take some effort to be strong and to gain the muscle that I've lost. So not lifting weights, not exercising didn't work for me in 2025. Something else that didn't work for me was pushing through burnout. I am just relentlessly optimistic about how much I can get done. And that's within an hour or within a month. I have a lot of passion for a lot of things. And so I continually take on things that seem reasonable on paper and then require more energy output than I have to give. And so I'm constantly learning what is too much and what's not enough, what I have capacity for, what I wish I had capacity for, what I'm called to in this season and what I am not. And that is a constant conversation that I'm having with my spiritual director, with my counselor, with my husband, with myself, with God. And I will just say that I pushed way too hard and reached a point of burnout that I'm still recovering from, where I just had nothing left to give. And so it's making it difficult, even as I look forward into 2026, to know what I want to do and what I don't want to do. Because honestly, right now, I don't want to do anything. I'm just tired. And I also know that's not the truest thing about me. And so I'm in the process of trying to discern, how do I recover? How do I get the rest that I need? What is mine to carry and what's mine to lay down? And so those are things that I'm asking myself, because it didn't work for me to push through burnout in 2025. And the last thing that didn't work for me is a lack of a weekly strategy. I'm a little embarrassed to admit this because I know better and I coach people and help people with time management all of the time. I have my own coach who has helped me with strategy and time management often. And I feel like the lack of a weekly strategy is making it really difficult for me to stay ahead of the things that I want to do, whether it's planning for my podcast, planning for my business. I feel like I'm ruled by the tyranny of the urgent because there's just too many things on my list, on my plate. And so I want to change that this year. But before I even come up with a strategy or a plan for 2026, I just have to name the reality that not having a weekly strategy, not having consistent ways that I'm spending my time to get ahead, that's not working for me. So there's my list, much longer than I expected, of what worked and what didn't work for me in 2025. And I hope that it gives you some freedom and permission to name the big things and the little things that work and that don't. And maybe it's not the whole year you're looking back at. Maybe you just want to look at right now in this season, this week, what worked and what didn't. What makes me feel most like myself and what takes me away from feeling like myself. Or another way to ask the question is in the form of an energy inventory. What's bringing me life and energy, and what's draining my life and energy? Those sorts of questions are always helpful as we think about how we want to move forward into the year to come. So with that, before I sign off, I want to read to you a blessing from a book that my very first spiritual director told me about. This is a book of blessings called Circle of Grace by Jan Richardson. This blessing is, I think, the perfect way to send us off into a new year. And it's called The Map You Make Yourself. You have looked at so many doors with longing, wondering if your life lay on the other side. For today, choose the door that opens to the inside. travel the most ancient way of all, the path that leads you to the center of your life. No map, but the one you make yourself. No provision, but what you already carry, and the grace that comes to those who walk the pilgrim's way. Speak this blessing as you set out, and watch how your rhythm slows, the cadence of the road drawing you into the pace that is your own. Eat when hungry. Rest when tired. Listen to your dreaming. Welcome detours as doors deeper in. Pray for protection. Ask for guidance. Offer gladness for the gifts that come, and then let them go. Do not expect to return by the same road. Home is always by another way, and you will know it not by the light that waits for you, but by the star that blazes inside you, telling you where you are is holy, and you are welcome here. Thanks for listening to this episode of Permission Slips. I hope that my reflections on what's worked and what didn't work for me in 2025 will give you permission to ask yourself the same questions. And in so doing, I hope you'll discover an invitation to greater wholeness in the year to come. If you're looking for someone to walk with you and to help you make sense of what's working and what's not, I do have a few individual coaching spots available this year. And you can find out more information about that on my website, which is jilliandebritz.com/coaching. I'd be honored to journey with you as we start the new year. Remember, your life matters, and so does your wholeness, more than you know.